Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a really fascinating mission today. We are going to unpack a highly intense, honestly, deeply unusual set of texts from a source called the Sovereign Path.
Yeah, it is definitely a heavy one.
It really is. And the core premise we're looking at claims that true elite, like world-shifting wealth, isn't actually about economics or business strategy at all. It requires literal spiritual backing.
Right, which is, I mean, it's a huge departure from how we usually think about finance.
Totally. So, okay, let's unpack this. Before we begin, we need to be clear that we are not endorsing the claims in these texts or validating the existence of these supernatural societies. We are acting purely as your impartial guides to examine the worldview, psychology, and philosophy presented in this source material.
Absolutely, because it is a profound and, frankly, kind of an unsettling worldview to explore.
Yeah, unsettling is a good word for it.
These sources, they do not treat the pursuit of wealth as just, a matter of climbing an economic ladder or optimizing a portfolio. They frame it as a high-stakes spiritual battlefield with very real, very visceral consequences. Like, you aren't just moving capital around, you are interacting with unseen forces that fundamentally shape reality itself.
It's wild. And I want you, the listener, to imagine for a second that you are a hardworking, struggling visionary. You've got the drive, the brilliance, the perfect product, but you're constantly hitting this invisible ceiling.
Which happens to so many people.
Exactly. Now, imagine someone slides a contract across the table to you. What if they told you that the only thing standing between you and absolute generational wealth wasn't your marketing strategy or your seed funding, but a spiritual contract? If you knew that signing would instantly shatter that glass ceiling, would you be tempted?
And that temptation is the entire psychological engine of these texts. I mean, it takes the concept of a Faustian bargain and just completely updates it for the modern corporate era.
It really does. It's like the ultimate insider trading, but with the universe.
Yeah, it completely redefines what we think of as leverage. When we talk about leverage in business, we usually mean, debt, equity, or technology.
Right, the tangible stuff.
Exactly. But this source material suggests that ultimate leverage is esoteric. It's unseen.
Right. And to understand the final grand solution this text eventually pitches to its readers, we have to first look at the terrifying problem it diagnoses in the modern corporate world.
The problem that drives people to seek out that esoteric leverage in the first place.
Exactly. And the text roots this in a specific conversation from Article 11. There's this older mentor figure speaking to a young, really frustrated entrepreneur.
Right, the guy who's doing everything right on paper, but still losing.
Yeah, exactly. And the mentor tells him that he is spiritually naked, which is such a striking phrase. I want to dig into the mechanics of that. What does that actually mean in the context of, like, a boardroom?
Well, the text argues that ambitious entrepreneurs inevitably reach a point where they realize their raw talent, their charisma, and their 80-hour work weeks simply aren't enough.
It's not enough to break through into the highest tiers of global power.
Exactly. They look around and realize the system appears to be operating on a completely different level that they just can't access.
So being spiritually naked is...
That means you are walking into a negotiation or a market relying solely on your human capabilities. Meanwhile, your opponents, at least according to this philosophy, have unseen forces actively dictating the outcomes.
Okay, so the mechanism here isn't just that the other guy has a better lawyer or, went to a better Ivy League school.
Yeah, not at all.
The text is actually claiming that esoteric leverage literally moves the tangible world. Like it shifts market trends, opens up regulatory loopholes, or influences the minds of key decision makers.
Yeah.
So you think you lost the bid because your price was too high, but the text claims you lost because you lacked supernatural backing.
Precisely. And that realization induces a profound desperation. The visionary is just starving for a breakthrough.
Because they've tried everything else.
Right. Out of sheer desperation to break their poverty and finally get that monumental win, they start looking for that unseen edge. They go seeking.
But they don't know where to look.
Exactly. Because the mechanics of legitimate, clean spiritual power are completely hidden from the public, they end up knocking on the absolute wrong doors.
They wander blindly into the dark path, which the text has a very specific name for. The mentor calls these wrong doors killing orders.
Yeah, killing orders. It's intense.
It is, and it explicitly ties this to things the public has whispered about for centuries, right? Like rumors of the Illuminati, ancient brotherhoods, or concepts like Isithwalo.
Right, Isithwala, which in Southern African context refers to wealth acquired through dark magic or really severe personal sacrifice.
Exactly. And the mentor defines these cartels very specifically. They are built entirely on extraction and blood.
And extraction is the key operational word there. I mean, these killing orders do not generate new value. They only consume.
It's just
Yeah. They siphon energy, life, or sanity from the initiate or the initiate's surroundings and convert that sacrifice into material wealth.
It's like signing the ultimate predatory loan. You agree to a terrifying terms of service for massive success, only to realize the fine print literally demands your soul as collateral.
That is actually the perfect analogy. You think you're getting a competitive edge to help build your company, but you're actually entering into a deeply parasitic relationship where you are the host.
That is so dark. But in these texts, it's not just a fairy tale where a villain magically collects your soul on your deathbed, right?
No, not at all. The consequences of that predatory loan are immediate. They are agonizing. And they split into two distinct psychological and economic outcomes for the person who signs the contract.
Okay, let's look at the first scenario. You sign the contract, and you actually get the money. Like the killing order fulfills its end of the bargain.
You get the massive payout.
Yeah, you get the 30-room mansion, the fleet of cars, the global influence. You are on the cover of magazines.
Yeah.
But the reality behind closed doors is described in the text as a high-paying hostage situation.
Because the riches are completely haunted, the texts argue that you lose your mind and your peace entirely.
Wait, really? Like literally lose your mind?
Yeah, because the rituals demanded by these killing orders don't just ask for a percentage of your corporate profits. They demand the destruction of life.
Oh, wow.
To maintain the wealth, the initiate might have to sacrifice a loved one, destroy their own sanity, or orchestrate the absolute ruin of their community.
So you become an active agent of extraction.
Exactly. You have everything you ever dreamed of, but you live in a state of absolute paralyzing terror.
Terrifying haunted riches. It paints this incredibly bleak picture of a billionaire who can't sleep, just jumping at shadows in their own fortress.
It does. But then the alternative presented in the text is honestly just as brutal.
Right. Let's say you get involved. You see the horrific reality of what they actually want you to do to secure the bag, and your conscience kicks in. You refuse. You tell them you won't cross that line.
Well, if you draw that moral line after making contact, the text says you are systematically dismantled.
They just destroy you.
You are stripped of everything. The cartel doesn't just let you politely resign, sign an NDA, and go back to your middle-class life.
Right, it's not a normal job.
No. They destroy you economically, socially, and psychologically. You are left completely impoverished and broken, basically serving as a cautionary tale to others in the network.
There is a line in Article 12 that absolutely stopped me in my tracks while reviewing the source material. It says, "It is a uniquely agonizing pain to regret your own ambition."
That is such a heavy line.
It really is. I want you to reflect on that for a second. Even if we step entirely outside the realm of the supernatural or secret cartels, that is a profound psychological observation. How often does unchecked ambition make someone feel like a prisoner rather than a king? I mean, we see people climb to the top of the corporate ladder all the time, alienate their families, compromise their deep-seated morals, and then look around from the penthouse and realize they are utterly miserable.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the text is using the supernatural lens to amplify a very real phenomenon in modern success culture.
Yeah, the hustle culture.
Exactly. You hustle, you grind, you sacrifice your peace, and for what? The text suggests that under a killing order, your fame and fortune are just an illusion of power.
You're just a puppet.
Right. You allowed a corrupted system to dictate your actions, and now you deeply miss the days when you were just a struggling, underfunded visionary. Because at least back then, you were spiritually intact.
That is fascinating. And because the consequences of stumbling into these dark cartels are so horrific, the text argues that this dynamic has created a massive, society-wide psychological block.
A huge one.
It has led directly to a pervasive fear of true power among good people.
What's fascinating here is how the author analyzes the resulting public perception.
Yeah, in Article 13.
Right. Article 13 outlines that for decades, the masses have been conditioned to associate all immense generational wealth and all secret societies strictly with darkness and evil.
Right. When the average person hears about ancient Freemasonry or secretive billionaire syndicates, the immediate assumption is that to acquire that level of influence, you inherently have to do something evil.
Exactly. The system has basically run a massive, highly effective PR campaign to convince the public that immense wealth and morality are mutually exclusive.
And the tragic result of that conditioning is that millions of brilliant, morally grounded, deeply ethical people look at the top of the mountain, assume the soil is entirely toxic, and actively avoid seeking any kind of real power or spiritual backing for their businesses.
They self-select out of the game entirely.
You just tap out.
Yeah. They choose to remain exhausted. They stay underfunded and struggling because they deeply believe that operating at a much smaller, localized scale is the only way to keep their conscience clean.
It's a self-imposed paralysis driven by a desire to remain morally pure.
Precisely.
So wait, what does this all mean? Is the text actually suggesting that simply being ethical and hardworking automatically makes you powerless in the traditional system? It feels like they are saying neutrality isn't an option. You either choose a spiritual side or you stay poor. Am I reading that right?
That raises a really important question, and honestly, your reading is spot on.
Okay.
The author relies entirely on that exact fiction. The cosmology of this text does not allow for a neutral, purely secular middle ground when it comes to world-shifting, civilization-level power.
Wow.
If you are operating at the highest levels, you are either spiritually backed or you are vulnerable to those who are.
That is a tough pill to swallow. It essentially claims secular meritocracy is a total myth at the highest levels.
It does, but the text argues that the choice isn't just a binary between being good and poor or evil and rich.
Right. There's another option.
Yes.
Yeah.
The author draws a firm cosmic line between an order of extraction, which we talked about, and an order of creation.
Okay, let's explore the mechanics of that. The order of extraction is the dark path we just discussed, the parasitic cartels that demand you sacrifice others to fuel your own rise. They consume.
Yes.
So an order of creation must operate on the exact opposite polarity.
Exactly. An order of creation generates. It builds infrastructure, it sustains life rather than feeding on it.
Which is a huge distinction.
It is the pivot point of the entire source material. Since the dark path is a deadly trap, and the normal secular path leaves the ethical visionary powerless and underfunded, the text introduces its ultimate answer, a third path.
The sanctuary for the ambitious. The text introduces the 30K Club, operating under a mandate they call sacred enterprise.
Right.
This is pitched as the ultimate counterforce to the killing orders. The promise here is staggering. It offers the exact same scale of elite wealth, like massive capital injections, elite networking, the kind of global influence that shifts borders and economies, but it claims to do it under a clean, highly protective spiritual mandate.
It represents a complete inversion of the parasitic model. The 30K Club claims to operate under a higher spiritual law.
And what are their rules of engagement?
Well, their core rule is stated very explicitly in the text. No blood, no harm, self-sacrifice only.
Oh, wow. Self-sacrifice only.
Yeah. They do not take life, they guard it. They demand that their initiates build civilization, not bleed it.
Build civilization, not bleed it.
Yeah.
That is such a powerful mandate.
Yeah.
And you see the stark contrast most clearly in how they handle initiation, right?
Absolutely.
We've talked about the pop culture rumors of dark rituals requiring some horrific sacrifice to prove your loyalty. The 30K Club has an initiation process they call the dark room. But what happens in the dark room is totally different in its mechanics.
It is, because instead of demanding the literal blood of a loved one or the economic ruin of a competitor, the dark room demands the sacrifice of the initiate's own ego and greed.
It requires a brutal process of absolute self-accountability. But how does sacrificing your ego mechanically translate into elite wealth, though? I mean, if I walk into a boardroom, my ego is usually what gives me the confidence to demand the massive valuation. How does losing that make me richer in this cosmology?
That is the brilliance of the text's internal logic. By demanding the death of the ego, the order ensures that the initiate is no longer driven by a selfish desire to hoard wealth for immediate personal gratification.
Oh, I see.
You aren't trying to buy a super yacht to prove your worth. When you are stripped of that vanity, the text argues you become a clean, trusted vessel for massive generational capital.
So you're just a conduit.
Right. The unseen forces of creation can pour hundreds of millions of dollars through you, knowing you will use it to build sustainable institutions rather than squandering it on personal vices.
Which, if we're being honest, might actually be a much harder sacrifice for a lot of hyper-ambitious people. Giving up the spotlight,
Yeah.
giving up the selfish desire to just flex your wealth. That is a massive ask for someone driven by raw Silicon Valley-style ambition.
It really is.
The text says they don't ask for your family. They ask that you build institutions that will feed your family and your community for the next 100 years. It completely shifts the focus from immediate quarterly extraction to long-term generational creation.
And what makes the source material so compelling is that it anchors these grand, mystical claims in very specific, real-world applications. This isn't framed as just abstract theoretical philosophy.
No, it gets very specific.
The text claims that right now, the 30K Club is actively deploying hundreds of millions in capital in the Southern African district.
The Southern African district, we should probably provide some context there. The text is pointing to a real-world geographic region, one that historically has deep, complex scars of extraction.
From colonialism to predatory mining practices, yes.
Exactly.
Which makes it a philosophically and symbolically potent place for an order of creation to deploy capital.
That makes a lot of sense.
They are claiming to inject hundreds of millions into this specific region, targeting individuals who are bold enough to wield this clean, supernatural authority for the good of their nation.
It's a direct challenge to the age-old adage that power corrupts.
Yes, exactly. They are arguing that power, when rigidly aligned with a mandate of creation and self-sacrifice, is the only way to actually heal a region's infrastructure.
It's basically saying, we have the supernatural capital to rebuild nations. We just need visionaries who won't get greedy when we hand them the check.
Pretty much.
And that leads directly to the call to action in these texts. Because ultimately, beyond all the philosophy, these articles act as a recruitment pitch. Throughout the text, the author repeatedly directs the reader to check their eligibility at a specific website, 30k.club.
It's a really fascinating rhetorical device. The text spends pages validating the ambition of the reader, acknowledging their deep-seated fear of corruption, and then offers a structured, supposedly safe container for them to achieve their wildest dreams without losing their soul.
It says, if you stayed away from true power out of fear, the threshold is now open.
It even offers a lifeline to those who might have already stumbled down the wrong path. The text claims this higher law of self-accountability has the power to actually sever dark contracts.
Oh, wow. So there's an off-ramp.
Yes, it is an open invitation to step out of the spiritual nakedness and into a protected elite network.
Well, we have covered immense ground today. We've explored a deeply intense philosophy that frames extreme wealth as a literal spiritual battlefield. We examine the terrifying parasitic mechanics of killing orders that trap visionaries in cycles of extraction and haunted riches.
Yeah, that was intense.
We looked at how the fear of that corruption paralyzes good people, keeping them underfunded. And finally, we unpacked the proposed third path, the 30K Club and Sacred Enterprise, which claims to offer world-shifting power through a strict code of creation and the absolute sacrifice of the ego.
And it forces a mirror onto anyone with big goals, honestly. Whether you view these texts literally as a hidden guide to supernatural finance, or simply as an intense, exaggerated metaphor for modern corporate ethics, the core questions are unavoidable.
Right. What are you actually willing to sacrifice for success?
And more importantly, is your personal ambition functioning as a tool for extraction in your industry or a tool for creation? If we look closely at our own motivations, that distinction is often razor thin. Are we building to sustain? Or are we building to consume?
That is the ultimate question, and it leaves me with one final thought to mull over, something not explicitly in the text, but deeply tied to its logic.
What's that?
Well, if this source material argues that wielding immense world-shifting power requires a rigid, supernatural moral framework to avoid becoming corrupt, what does that say about our modern, purely secular financial systems?
That's a great point.
Is the everyday, non-mystical stock market its own kind of blind extraction order, simply because it operates without any built-in spiritual code?
I mean, if there is no higher mandate governing the flow of capital, it certainly raises the question of what defaults we are blindly falling into.
Exactly. So think back to that visionary sitting at the table. The contract is still there. But maybe the real question isn't whether you sign it. Maybe the question is, whose rules are written in the fine print?